Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov Chess Channel, and welcome to our best chess games of all time series. So, in this series, we're following the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history, and today I wanted to show you another great game played by the legendary Anatoly Karpov against the legendary Viktor Korchnoi. This was, I think, one of the most tensed World Championship match that have been played in chess history because Anatoly Karpov and Viktor Korchnoi literally hated each other. This is a part of this communism that was going on, I think, back in the USSR because Anatoly Karpov was really loved by the communists. On the other hand, Viktor Korchnoi was not. Viktor Korchnoi had to escape from the USSR, wasn't able to bring his family to him. Anatoly Karpov accused Viktor Korchnoi that he was leaving his family. Who knows what this is really the truth? But in one interview, Viktor Korchnoi accused Anatoly Karpov that he had to do something with the fact that he cannot see his family. So, as I said, this was really a tense match game. We have now Anatoly Karpov, the world champion, and Viktor Korchnoi, the challenger. He's standing in front of Anatoly and he's accusing him that he has to do something with his family. So, as I said, this wasn't, I think, maybe the most attractive of World Championship matches, but this was, I think, the most tense World Championship match. So, during the match game, both of these players basically complained about many things. They were even more complaining than Bobby Fischer used to, and we know how Bobby Fischer used to complain. For instance, Anatoly Karpov complained about the sunglasses that Viktor Korchnoi was wearing. On the other hand, Viktor Korchnoi was complaining about one of Anatoly Karpov's crew members that he's using some paranormal activities on him, which is of course ridiculous. But okay, as I said, we have now the game 8 from this World Championship match in which Anatoly Karpov played with the white pieces, Korchnoi with the black pieces, and eventually Anatoly Karpov won the match game with the result to 6-5, 6 wins. Of course, was the decision. This was really this Fischer rule in which you had to make 6 wins in order to win the match game. And now I wanted to show really a beauty from this round 8 in which, as I said, Anatoly Karpov played with the white pieces. So here we have e5 by Karpov, we have e4 by Karpov, e5 by Korchnoi, we have knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, and after a6, the common Ruy Lopez, bishop to a4, we have knight to f6, and now castling played by Karpov. And here we have already a interesting decision by Korchnoi. Most of the times he played maybe a more closed variation of the Ruy Lopez. He tried here now to open the game with the move knight to e4, which is of course good for us. We see some tactics. We want to see open games. After the move knight to e4, here Karpov played the move d4, trying of course to open the e file because the king is still a little bit in the center. And now we have b5 after bishop to b3, d5. If you try here to grab another pawn after e takes d4, then you get this problem of the e-file and also the problem of this bishop's activity. You shouldn't do that from black's perspective. After knight takes d, knight takes, queen takes d, and now if you try to escape with the knight, you see this is the problematic thing. You would expect, of course, white to play rook to e1, then you're trying of course to cover with the knight on e6, but that's not possible because you get this tactical shot. Bishop takes on f7, after king takes queen to d5, the fork on the rook and the king, and it would be game over, I think, for black here. So that's why here this is the common theory still after the move bishop to b3, d5, closing the center, trying to keep now a compact position, and now d takes e4 played by Karpov. This is now a new position in which black has the weakness of d5. White is also the weakness on e5, which is a weakness but also white's strength. The problem for black is of course this space advantage on the 5th rank that white has gained here. So this pawn is really a little bit annoying. Bishop to e6 had to be played. Of course, the d5 pawn was hanging, and now we have knight to d2. So Karpov is challenging immediately Korchnoi's knight on e4 because this is the piece that annoys us a little bit from white's perspective. We want to get rid of this knight, which of course occupies our side of the board. So that's why knight to c5. Korchnoi tries to stay with the pieces on the board, and now c3, which is a very important move. If you take, for instance, knight takes b3. We can still play, I think, on a positional idea, knight takes b3 and then knight to d4, trying to cement the knight on the dark square, really keep the position compact, and still we would have a good activity with this dark square bishop. And what I don't like about the setup of blacks is, of course, this bishop on e6, which basically is only a part of a pawn chain. You shouldn't play, of course, with your bishops like this. Still, it was, of course, main theory here, but I would always choose something else. I don't want to have this bishop like this. As I said here, after move knight to c5, c3 was played, and now we have, I think, a huge positional mistake here by Viktor Korchnoi, the move g6. The problem about this move g6 is that the first problem is, of course, that you have weakened the pawn structure further. This is maybe good to see for some beginners, how you should not maybe weaken the pawn structure where you're supposed to castle, where you trying to secure the king. Now, after the move g6, we have this dark square weaknesses here in front of black's king. So, of course, Karpov will use this dark square weaknesses. But the other problem, I think, is that if we want to castle, here you have to move your pieces 3 times. So here g6, bishop to g7, and then castling. I think a better idea is here to play bishop to e7 and then castling. You see, you get the same idea but with a +1 tempo. And the other important thing about this move bishop to e7, why is it better than this g6, is that you have still one more piece in front of the king. So if this rook comes into the game, then you still have the bishop as a protector of your king, so the king would be perfectly secured. Here you see now the problems, here g6, you see the problems and how Karpov will exploit these weaknesses that Korchnoi has created. And I think this next attack that Karpov has played here really shows us the difference between really a master and a world champion. So here Karpov immediately played queen to e2, trying to hang on to this space advantage that he has, which is, of course, the pawn on e5. Bishop to g7 was played, and now comes really a stunning move by Karpov, a great attacking move. He played knight to d4, leaving the pawn hanging. You have to take the pawn if you want, of course, to take it. You have to take it with the knight. Taking with the bishop is not an option because your knight is hanging. And the problem is, if you take knight takes d4, then after c takes d4 and knight takes b3, we have knight takes b3. So Karpov, of course, saw all of this. Okay, you can castle now. But I think that here, after bishop to d2 and bishop to b4, black would really have some troubles on dark squares. One of the main ideas of white is here in this particular position would be simply to get rid of the dark square bishops. I just want you to imagine now this position without the dark square bishops on the board. If we evaluate the piece activity, this bishop is, as I said, only used as a pawn part of the pawn chain, which is not good. And now Karpov would have really a nice square to jump with the knight on c5, and then with some potential f4 f5 pawn breakthrough. So that's why you see, after the move knight to d4, knight takes e5 was played by Korchnoi, and you see now the troubles when you stay with the king in the center, how Karpov will punish it. As I mentioned, bishop to e7 was much better idea. We have now f4, which comes with the tempo. That's the most important thing. And after knight to c4, now f5, again a new tempo. You have to take basically with the pawn. Your bishop is hanging, so here that's why g takes f5. And after knight takes f5, this knight will be really an annoying knight in the continuation of the game. Really a great minor piece attack here by Anatoly Karpov. You cannot castle, that's the main problem. If you castle, then you have some troubles with queen to g4, rook to f3, rook to g3, rook to h3. Many tactical possibilities here by Anatoly Karpov. In the game, rook to g8 was played, and now knight takes c4. We have d takes c4, and now bishop to c2, which is perfectly fine. Still, we're continuing the game with this very active knight, with this pin on the king, and basically black is stuck in the center with the king. That's the main problem. Even queenside castling doesn't bring you so much, as you have already weakened the pawn structure. You have 2 advanced pawns on the queen side, so castling, even if you manage to do that will be also very, very dangerous. So in the game, knight to d3 was played. We have bishop to h6 and now bishop to f8. The only move, maybe, but just maybe, still it's a bad position for black anyway, but maybe the only move that saves the position a little bit is to take the bishop on h6 after knight takes h6. The problem is you cannot play rook to g7. This would be a suicide here after rook takes f7. If you take, for instance, rook takes f7, then we have queen to e6. If you try to cover with the queen in order to protect, then you get queen to c6 and you lose the rook and probably the game. So here you would be forced in this continuation to play the move rook to g6, but still this idea knight takes f7 you cannot take with the bishop. That's the main problem. The queen is very, very dangerous here on the e file. Queen to e7 would be the continuation, but now bishop takes d3. We have c takes d3 would be a possibility, and now again the problem of this loose rook a little bit on a8. Queen to e4 is a serious threat. I'm not sure where to go. Maybe knight to rook to c8, but now knight to e4, e5 is perfectly fine with an attack on the rook, and still this king is basically lost here on e8. So that's why here, as I said, bishop takes h6, a better move. Korchnoi made another mistake, bishop to f8, and now we have rook to d1, bringing the last active piece, which is really an important principle to recognize in your own game. When you have really this activity, it's time to play with the last piece that hasn't played so far. You have to include all of the pieces in the attack. Rook to d1, very important move, keeping the rook on the d file where the queen is. Of course, there are always some discovered attacks on the queen on d8, queen to d5, and we have bishop takes d3, pawn takes d3, and now rook takes d3, and queen to c6. Now Karpov simply took, bishop takes f8, and now queen to b6. Another problem, it's only a check. We still have a nice square for our king. King to h1. The king is not endangered here by Anatoly Karpov. King takes f8, and now queen to f3. We have now really a dynamic game. If you take here the knight, you lose the rook. This queen to f3 comes with a very important tempo on the rook. Rook to d8 was played, and now again you see Anatoly Karpov is pushing, is playing on simple threats and always keeping Korchnoi occupied, keeping him busy. He has to always react. He doesn't have time to regroup. He doesn't have the time to counterattack somehow. After knight to h6, knight to h6, here rook to g7 was played, and now Karpov plays really one of the best moves I've seen in my life. Rook to d7. The problem is if you take bishop takes d7, then you get queen takes f7. It's checkmate. You can only take with the rook, but now rook takes f7 and it's game over. Great attack here by Karpov. Rook to d7, and now rook to b8 was played, and now Karpov simply took. There is simply too much pressure on this f7 square. Bishop takes rook on d7, but now knight to d8, and in this position Viktor Korchnoi resigned. Whatever you do, you could try maybe here king to e7, but then you get checkmated immediately. The only way to save the position here after knight to d8 is to sacrifice the bishop with the move bishop to f5, but still queen to f5. You have to move the king somewhere. Here queen to f8. Again, you have only one square for the king. Here the square d7, and now rook to d1 wins the position immediately. So great attack. I really liked this move, rook to d7 here by Anatoly Karpov, deflecting the bishop here from the defense of this very weak f7 square. Great attacking skills by the legendary Anatoly Karpov. As I said, he won the match game eventually in a tough game because he was leading 5-2, and then Viktor Korchnoi had some three games. He won 3 games, and the result was 5-5. So as this was really a tense game, as I mentioned, probably Viktor Korchnoi's maybe worst moment in his life. But okay, chess history is also part of our history. Many great players didn't have the opportunity to become world champions. Anatoly Karpov, of course, was also a great world champion, but still, in my opinion, maybe the top 3 were Bobby Fischer, Garry Kasparov, and now Magnus Carlsen. But okay, I hope that you enjoyed this attacking game played by Anatoly Karpov. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was really a great miniature. If you want to see more games like this, you can check out my other best chess games of all times. Here's the link, and you can also watch my best chess games played by engines, with some Lilas Z0 Stockfish games, and many, many more. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thank you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.